On Saturday, Will Mejia of the Belize Territorial Volunteers planned to travel to the Gracias a Dios border marker, but his plans were thwarted by the Guatemala Navy, which created a barrier, preventing him from going into the Sarstún River and onto Gracias a Dios. But most importantly, and not surprising to Foreign Minister Wilfred Elrington, the Guatemalan boats were in Belizean waters. Minister Elrington says that the Guatemalan Navy broke international laws. Yesterday, the People's United Party called on the government to shoot off a strong protest note of Guatemala's illegal action, something that the government says they will do.
Certainly, military forces have no business entering into the space of sovereign independent nations. That is normally regarded as an act of aggression. It's tantamount to initiation of hostile action, and that is contrary to international law. Just like how you can trespass into my yard, you breach civil law, tort, you're committing a tort. Well, it's a breach of international law. But when you have that kind of thing, it is resolved by forceful diplomatic notes to try to get them not to repeat it. And then if it continues to be repeated, then it has to be addressed in these multinational fora like the OAS and the UN, where you go and discuss and debate it and work out a modus vivendi whereby these things don't continue to happen.
Sir, can they claim right of innocent passage in this particular instance?
No, this is not a case of passage. This is a case of coming in and, but this is not a case that they are passing through, trying to get from one country to the next and the like. That's an innocent passage. There is no thought of that. The suggestion is that one of the smaller vessels may well have entered into Belizean waters, although they have not been able to verify it. But the bigger vessels had not. That is the information I have at this time. But even in respect to the smaller vessel, it has no business coming to our waters, and therefore we have to protest that. You know, you can't be going in. It's unlawful.
As you heard, Elrington used the word forceful as it relates to the protest note that will be sent against Guatemala's illegal entry into Belize. But how forceful will that protest note be? When the group of Belizeans was detained by Guatemalan armed forces last year, a protest note was sent to Guatemala. During a Senate meeting, Senator Lisa Schumann described the note as kind to Guatemala. Elrington responded to the terminologies.
The language of diplomacy is normally referred to as a gentleman's language, you know, and the language is very, very different from the type of language that you hear being used in the streets and on the bars and when people have quarrel. You can say in a very forceful way, using very nice language, what you have in mind. And the diplomats have a particular way of crafting these messages which convey quite forcefully, although people who are not necessarily as acquainted with the legalese, as it were, of diplomatic language or the formality of diplomatic language will think that it may not be forceful enough. But these documents are crafted by the officials in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who have copious years dealing with this kind of thing. They are the expert on it, and I don't seek to second guess them. They normally work on a protest note like that. Not one person. You have a group of them that will look at it, make sure that it is properly done, and then it is dispatched. We look at it, send it to me. Many times it will send to the Prime Minister. I might have the view that it may not be as strongly worded as it could be, but you don't want to second guess your officials. They are the people who have this expertise in that area, so we go along with it.
Senator Schumann also revealed what Guatemala's response was to Belize's protest note. Back then, she described it as aggressive towards Belize's stance on the issue. Elrington explained his position.
I don't think that one does any good really by taking this kind of attitude towards this dispute. I think that the important thing is that somebody has trespassed or has come into your territory unlawfully, and that you notify them of it and you request that it is not repeated and that kind of thing. I think that is a message you get, and so long as the message is clear, unmistakable, I don't think it serves any purpose to be aggressive and confrontational and rude. Some people are very rude in their response and very aggressive and very confrontational. My style is different. I tend to be cool and calm and don't panic and don't knee jerk and don't overreact. I try to be balanced and mature and sober, especially when you're dealing with sovereign nations. I think you have an obligation to be sober and mature and measured in how you deal with them.
Foreign Minister Ellerington did not give a time frame in which that protest note would be sent. The operations of the Organization of American States along the adjacency zone between Belize and Guatemala may soon come to a halt. The OAS, which has played a very crucial role in the Belize-Guatemala dispute as an international referee, requires more than $200,000 to keep its operations running in Belize, particularly along the border. The funds that it has been tapping into all these years have run dry, and if the money is not found by August, then the office of the OAS will be just that, an office. However, Belize's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been actively seeking funds from several allies.
Well, the OAS office at the adjacency zone has to be financed, and I think it is in excess of $200,000 a year US to keep it open. And that money has got to be obtained on an annual basis. It is money that is paid into the OAS Peace Fund, and historically it has been funded by a group of friends, the European Union, Canada, Mexico, and other friendly countries. They contribute a certain proportion of the funds. So it has got to be replenished on an annual basis. And the reports we have received is that we do have some difficulty in securing the allocation that will be needed after August of this year. So we are in fact looking assiduously at trying to see how we can in fact get those funds. We work in trying to get it by talking to the various countries that are friendly with us. The Guatemalans do the same, as well as the representative from the OAS. I do know that a number of people have in fact been approached by the OAS representatives, a number of countries. Myself and the foreign minister of Guatemala are scheduled to meet in Washington on the 6th of April with a view to urging upon him the importance and urgency of us ensuring that we get this funding.
I think yesterday Mr. Courtney alluded to the fact, that Guatemala isn't interested of having the base, keeping the office there at the adjacency zone, because he called upon the government to do the right thing and to support your efforts. So he sort of alluded that they're not, doing what we're doing.
Is that the sense you're getting?
There is suggestion in some quarters that the Guatemalans in some quarters may think that the office is more favorably disposed to Belize than to Guatemala. But that is not the perception I get when I interact with the official Guatemalan officials, I mean, the foreign minister from Guatemala is very insistent on us approaching the Secretary General as quickly as possible to try to work on getting the funds, proposing that we do what we call a road show. We go to the capitals in Europe and other friendly countries and solicit the resources that are so badly needed. So that is something that is in the works. So from his own intimation, I don't get the sense that he believes that that is a case that they don't want to participate in it.
It is not advisable that Belize or Guatemala contribute to the OAS because it is the two countries in dispute. Will Belizeans agree to take Guatemala's claim to the International Court of Justice? That answer will be provided when Belizeans take part in the ICJ referendum. But when will this referendum be held? Foreign Affairs Minister Wilfred Elrington told Love News that when it comes to the date, the ball is in Guatemala's court.
The Guatemalans will still have to ratify the amended protocol. That has not yet been done. I do not know when that will be done. And unless and until that is done, we can't move forward. So we just have to wait. The important thing, I'm glad you raised that, because the important thing for the Belizean public to know is that we have to work together with the Guatemalans. It takes two to tango. It takes two to come to an agreement. We can't go on our own. We have to wait until they get their ducks in a row. Once they get their green light from their government, then we can proceed. So we depend on them in this process.
But they're not given a time frame.
No,
because
you can't. Again, it's difficult to give sovereign nations time frame. These are sovereign nations you're dealing with. It's a nation. You have to wait until they have the ability to get it done. We can't force sovereign. You can't force sovereign nations to do things.